Hey there, Tammy Davis here, and I'm not going to lie, it's a beautiful day outside, and I just came in from being outside when it's been kind of on my mind to do something along the lines of stress. And I know I've talked about it a lot, and we all have a particular relationship to what stress is. And what the intention of this video is to expand upon our understanding of what stress really is and redefine it, put it that way. Again, we recognize it as a negative, and in fact, it's a positive. You know, the truth be told, there is both a good side and a bad side, if you will, to just about everything. I mean, there's always a positive and a negative, or a dark and a light, if you will. And so when it comes to stress, it's no different. And this is kind of what I wanted to elaborate on, because if you've watched any of my other videos, you may realize that there's a shift happening with me, and that's simply because of the development of my courses. 30 years essentially in medicine and pharmaceuticals and dentistry and plant medicine, and there's a lot of experience basically in the health industry as far as I'm concerned, including the science of nutrition. And what I mean by that is actually how the components of food are necessary cofactors for every systemic function. The body requires just different vitamins and minerals, as well as the macronutrients, the carbs, the proteins, and the fats. So that all brought together, and the dissatisfaction of truthfully what is the root cause. I mean, because ideally everyone's working towards understanding the real reason for an illness. This is the reason why you have geneticists studying the human genome to identify very specific genes that are related to various illnesses. And there are some similarities. There's no denying that. And at the same time, there's other genetic differences. Even though somebody may both be living with, diabetes type 2 or multiple sclerosis or, breast cancer, there's variations within the disease. So like autism, we know of a spectrum. Schizophrenia has a variety of classifications. So everything basically comes in any number of forms. And this is because of the differences within the genetics. So it's very difficult to pinpoint a specific root cause. Nonetheless, I've been completely dissatisfied my entire career with that answer. And as a young girl, I was very much into mystery books. I love mysteries today and love, solving puzzles. And in my mind, poor health is a puzzle. Each individual that walks into my life and provides me the opportunity to serve them becomes a mystery, not in the sense that I'll never get to the answer, but really what's truthfully going on with that individual. And so for years, I've worked at the level of hear a symptom, treat the symptom, deal with the symptom, and the next one that comes about. And, there's always been stumbling blocks, and then somebody finds a setback. And my biggest hurdle at this point with people is we are so heavily involved in the conventional model, which is not just treating the symptoms, but it's actually classifying diseases and working within a framework, if you basically. And it's that framework that's limiting. I shared something yesterday on Instagram that is, if you want to experience good health, it's going to require unconventional thinking. We hear about living out of the box and thinking out of the box and operating out of the box and so forth, but we're not actually treating our health in such a way. I realize there's plenty of alternative practitioners, and there are definitely those who are doing energy work. So this isn't to say 100% everybody is just not doing it, right? That's not what I'm saying. Is we're all working within a framework. And again, the energy workers are probably the ones that are exceeding that and really working outside the box. because they're working with the individual energy. So there's a really good example of what's possible when we stop looking at what the textbook says and so forth. So that aside, as I mentioned, it's been a puzzle for me and something that I've proceeded to follow this path and eventually developed Breaking the Cycle of Disease Management. And, that is an interesting title, but it really does try to highlight the how we came to be where we are today and begin to inspire alternative ways of thinking. Again, the alternative practitioners are doing everything they can, and like I said, the biggest challenge that I have with any client is generally we're so accustomed to, if I say the conventional model, pardon me, I got something in my eye. When I say the conventional model, that is oftentimes, again, we do as much as we can to support the system. And yes, there is more of an acceptance of more natural remedies. But the fact is that we're doing too much. I've written about this. I know I've spoken about it, that too much information is just flat out too much information. I saw somebody not too long ago on LinkedIn go, what does less is more actually mean? And they weren't necessarily talking about what I say, because other people are saying it. And it was very interesting to see the article that was written as a result. But in my world, the reason why less is more effective is because the body will naturally shut itself down. This is how we are designed. What we have right here is amazing. It's just, I live in awe of it. And every day I do my work and my research, the more awestruck I become, because we have every chemical that we need to regulate our chemistry and to protect us. And when you start putting too much information in there, whether it be vitamins and minerals and other phytonutrients and medications and, and herbs and oils and everything else, the receptors start to turn themselves off. That's just what it is. And this is the reason why I've been saying for years with essential oils, you can't flood the body because they turn themselves off. And I think in the last video, actually, I talked about that with regards to alcohol as an example. Alcohol affects the GABA receptors, or a particular GABA receptor. When the receptor becomes too flooded, GABA it really helps to relax us. This is the reason why when you drink, you feel relaxed. You start to drink too much, you're going to pass out. And so once you've passed out, but the alcohol's still flowing through the system, eventually these GABA receptors are like, enough already. And in order to protect you, the GABA receptors stop taking it. And in turn, the individual eventually wakes up because the GABA is no longer being activated. That's a protection mechanism. This is what happens when we put too much information into the body. So when I start to work with someone and I start to redirect them into doing less and to really paying attention to the messages that their body's sending them, whether it be agitation or comfort, you name it, and this is how I work with people, it's really backing off of that. I had an MS client recently that started with me, had been taking some supplementation, and I think I actually talked about this before, and eventually I had to back them off of that because they added one more nutraceutical that apparently had a chemical emulsifier in it, which, I'm not complaining about the chemical as much as I am saying that the emulsifier in these nutraceuticals is actually accentuating the uptake of these nutrients. While that may seem helpful, it's, again, can be too much information, and so individuals can begin to backslide. When you've included essential oils in that, it really becomes necessary to back off on all this stuff because, again, the receptors are going to turn themselves off to protect you. That's what they're there to do. They are there to activate and deactivate themselves as your system requires. One of the ones that I'm working on right now as far as writing about, it's just fascinating to me, but I'm going to share one of the chemicals that I'm here, and I've related it to other ones in nature. Again, everything in moderation. And this will actually tie into stress, I promise you. But the fact is that if you're at all familiar with methylation pathway, or having had your own methylation tested and finding out whether you have a double defect on MTHFR or the CBS or the COMT and so forth, first and foremost, it's very difficult to say that those double defects are actually causing your problem. They actually might be helping you. They might be working. Well, truthfully, the bottom line is it's all working in your favor, even though you don't necessarily feel like it is. The challenge that we're facing is that we're looking at these things as if the double defects or the yellow, the single defects, are the problem, and the green ones, where there's no defects, are the good ones. That's not the case. It's, again, difficult to determine which one is actually leading to the issues that you're having and not. This is the reason why they offer the explanations, to say that when they've done the studies, that they've been able to link this particular genetic complex with this health condition. This does not mean that is the root cause of yours. That just means that they've been able to link it in other people. But whether or not that's actually causing your problem, they can't tell you, because it's not. Because, well, first of all, the epigenome is constantly activating and deactivating itself depending on the information that you're putting into it. That said, peroxynitrite happens to be one of the toxins that's produced when nitric oxide synthase off the nitric oxide synthase genetic complex. Okay, so that is a chemical that the body produces. It can produce too much. When it's too high, we end up with cardiovascular or respiratory issues, oftentimes digestive upset like indigestion, colitis, ulcerative colitis, and again, like I said, cardiovascular as well as respiratory, in addition to neurological problems, nerve scarring. It's because it's a neurotoxin. So any number of health conditions can be the result of high peroxynitrite. And I do know of a number of naturopaths who supply their clientele with peroxynitrite scavenger because they're trying to get it out of the body. But that's because they're basing it on oftentimes on the test and not so much what the client is presenting with. And again, even if the client presents with respiratory, cardiovascular, digestive, it does not necessarily mean that it's only peroxynitrite. There are other things that could lead to this. And the reason I'm hammering on peroxynitrite is because peroxynitrite also deactivates norepinephrine. It actually counters the effects of norepinephrine. Now, norepinephrine is used by the body to balance out the autonomic nervous system. Acetylcholine causes respiration to increase. This is the fight or flight. So acetylcholine basically signals fight or flight. This is the reason why blood pressure goes up, the heart rate increases, respiration goes, becomes rapid. This is the result of that stress. This is what happens when something startles you or something's happening around you that's frightening. This is what causes it. And the norepinephrine kicks in to deactivate the acetylcholine at the nerve endings. The reason this is important is because we have people in our midst with very low blood pressure, and low blood pressure, also known as hypotension or as a hypotensive condition, is the result of elevated norepinephrine. Norepinephrine is actually administered as a medication in some cases, such as high blood pressure, and I've also known it to be administered with autism. So this is the reason why. It's because it actually helps to deactivate that stress response. What I've discovered through my studies is that they have discovered that peroxynitrite actually deactivates the norepinephrine. So that's a point that I'm trying to get at, is that this particular level of oxidative stress that we're looking at and trying to eliminate from the body, it's not necessary to eliminate all of it. What we have to do is deactivate the stress response and allow the body to regulate its own chemistry. And that brings me back into what I was initially saying. I've talked about in the past a lot of different health conditions, whether it be breast cancer, prostate, psoriasis, eczema, addiction, Autism, yes, they all are their own classification of disease or disorder. Yes, they are all real. I am not disputing any of that. I totally get the physical symptoms and the mental and emotional disturbances that arise from all of these health conditions. At the same time, what I'm finding, and again, this came out of my Breaking the Cycle of Disease Management program, is that really comes down to the way the DNA is responding to the environment, whether it be internal or external. Hence, stress. You see, stress is actually a mechanism of action. It's a catalyst for change. It's a protection mechanism gone haywire. When I was in high school, I studied computer programming and got into college and even did some writing of computer programming, and I was never really sure why I did that. I mean, I loved computers and did nothing with it. But now it completely and totally applies to this, because when you write a bad program or you write a program and then it becomes a loop, you have to rewrite the program. And the stress response, there's a lot of activity out there encouraging people to exercise and to meditate, and all of that is extremely helpful. But it's not getting it to the cell level. Why? Because there's so much information. Now, granted, it's virtually impossible to control everything out here because, I mean, come on, it's all around us, the vapor cigarettes, the emissions from the vehicles, and regular cigarettes, perfumes, emissions from aircraft. I mean, you name it. I mean, just aerosols from plants. I don't mean necessarily these kinds of plants. I'm talking about industrial plants, but these plants too. I mean, my goodness, they're putting off aerosols. This is actually our aromatics, because this is how they actually attract insects. This is actually how they protect themselves. You see, the DNA, even though the structure of the DNA, I should say the chemical placement of the DNA varies between species, it behaves the same way. And again, I want to go back, and this is what stress really is. It's an activator. And in our situation, you can call it mental emotional stress causing the problem, and I'm certain it's contributing to the issues. But when you have a world of bacteria and viruses, and you have all these aromatics being emitted, and aerosols and emissions and such, whether it's the fertilizer they're spraying on the neighbor's yard or on the fields, all of this is information by the body. The body does have an ability to recognize the difference between what's good for it and what's not. But if you're not giving it enough of the good, it's going to be overwhelmed by the bad. Okay, and I hate to even use those words, but I'm going to say, and so essential oils are huge. And even then, again, this is what I'm writing about in my current blog. There are chemicals in the essential oils that are also neurotoxic, but they do help with cell health. So balance is essential. That's really what it comes down to. And not overwhelming the body, and being able to integrate as well as vary your choices from your foods to your herbs to everything, and learning how to balance and round everything out. So that means, from what I've discovered and the way I'm now working with folks, it's really about, again, supporting the stress response. You can do this beginning with the digestion, because ultimately what ends up happening, there's a physiological impact, and that's what I teach in my Self-as-Sanctuary program. There's a physiological impact that happens under chronic states of stress. So this, I'm not talking just about mentally emotional, I'm just talking about the world at large affecting us and how it's affecting our system. So helping the digestive system, that means the GI, the gut, from the beginning. But it takes it down to the cell level, because ultimately what happens is the energy in the body is totally redirected. And in the case of survival, now you may go, well, that doesn't make any sense, because if my life is being threatened, I need to have all of this stuff happening. But the fact is that in nature, threats are only temporary. I mean, granted, everything is only temporary, but you know what I'm saying. It's not like you're going to live, you're going to run for the rest of your life from this lion that's trying to chase you. You're either going to be eaten by the lion or you're going to get away from the lion, at which point the stress is deactivated. The sad part is that we're never getting away from the lion, and the lion isn't eating us. We are seriously just running from the lion or trying to protect ourselves from the lion. And under that chronic state of protection, we are not breaking our nutrients down. And I mean our macronutrients. I am not talking about vitamins and minerals, folks. We get plenty of vitamins and minerals. It's really about assisting the digestive system to get those macronutrients broken down small enough so that the body can actually use it. Otherwise, you have larger particles that are not being used floating throughout the system that is recognized by the immune system as something it can't use, hence an immune reaction. How this translates out into what's going to happen with your system really depends on your genetics. And it does come down to the epigenome, but you can't really do a saliva test and think that that's going to be your epigenome from this point forward. They've studied plenty of identical twins, and they've recognized that the epigenome, even though it's very similar at birth, does change over time. As they become adults, the epigenome is changing. Our hormones change it. I've mentioned this before. Everything is affecting it. And so really being more cautious of how much information you put into your system, but making wise decisions if you're going to and need to use things like pharmaceuticals and nutraceuticals that have added chemicals to it. Please at least enhance them with as whole food as possible. If you're eating foods with a lot of additives and processed foods, please make sure that you include such things as essential oils, because the truth is that the essential oils they're signaling molecules, not unlike bleach and vitamin E. I mean, there's so many different types of signaling molecules. I mean, I can't even begin to list them. But again, this is the stuff that I go into with regards to when I talk about, like I said, with breaking the cycle of disease management. But that's ultimately what stress is. And that is really what it comes down to when it comes to health. Again, I respect all the work that everyone's doing when it comes to identifying and trying to, pinpoint very specific genes. But the fact is that there's constant change happening. We are wired for change. This is how we've gotten to this point. So being more flexible, being more unconventional, and not working within this box, allowing the body to lead. And I know it's frustrating. I'm not going to lie to you. It would be really handy to have someone just go, hey, just do this and you'll be fine. It would just take that much pressure off, because then we could focus on other things in life. But now we have this added pressure of dealing with our health. And it is all a choice. I mean, we don't even have to. We can just live with whatever we get, or we can try to improve the quality of our health. And my mission is to see everyone feeling as good as possible, and especially with our children coming into the world with earlier and earlier health issues. Don't they deserve an opportunity to actually experience life to its fullest? So that's really what this is about. I mean, I want everyone, and again, those living with addiction and other mental health issues, I totally get it. My heart is absolutely with them. And and that's really what my biggest call is to really help people just feel good. But again, identifying what's good for who is virtually next to impossible, because your system is your system. Now, this doesn't mean all the weight falls on your shoulders when it comes to identifying what's good for you. It just means that if we start to assist the body to deactivate the stress response, the system can actually begin to regulate its own chemicals, and that does start with the digestion. When it comes to select essential oils, that is going to be very specific. And do I recommend them? Absolutely, I recommend them, especially in the beginning. Once we get to this utopia type of world where we don't have all of the information that's out there affecting our systems, then maybe not. But truthfully, if you're going to live on nutraceuticals and pharmaceuticals, you might want to factor in essential oils in there. And it doesn't have to be a lot, but again, you want to make sure that you vary it. And the other thing I want to point out is that at no point in time do you have to use anything on a regular time basis. It's all about what you need and how it works for your system. I get to ask that question all the time. And yes, I do make recommendations, use it twice a day. And that's oftentimes just to kickstart the system. I've worked in treatment facilities doing this with folks, and we've seen amazing results. I've seen results all over the place, even outside. I work with people around the country and throughout the states and other countries, actually. And we see just incredible results, but it really is about slowing it down and rethinking how much we're actually introducing into the body and paying attention to the signals the body is sending and working with that and creating balance as opposed to dumping everything into one problem or a handful of symptoms. And that's the one thing I typically see is we create this cocktail of remedies that is all dealing with insomnia and constipation or this rash or, this mood disorder. I mean, we have this tendency to kind of just go, oh, well, this is good for this and this is good for this. And the fact is that you can't do it that way. There are interactions, and what you want to do is recognize that if I were to bottom line it comes down to digestion and then hormonal imbalance. It's the improper cell assimilation of nutrients, which is now triggering an immune reaction. And if you can, again, start with the digestion, you definitely want to include essential oils. Again, I actually have a personalized aromatherapy course where I just help you identify specific oils that would be good for you. Including those kinds of essential oils would be very, very helpful. Very specific superfoods that will enhance your hormonal system, possibly increasing some minerals. But again, I want to say here, from what I've come to learn, that we are actually overdoing it on the area of calcium, and that we're better off and getting our calcium through our foods, that taking it in a supplement form is really exaggerating our problems, especially with the number of people that have cholesterol issues and hormonal imbalances. This calcium is just not really doing you any good. I've had people tell me, well, I feel good when I take it, and I'm going to say, consider there are other things in there besides just the calcium. So, I could go into this very long. I could really go into this. So there are some nutritional suggestions I would make in the way of supplements. I think I've made those in the past, which is digestive enzymes. If you're going to do probiotics, take them in a supplement form. If you have histamine issues, you don't really want to be doing a lot of fermented foods. Getting your probiotics in like I said, in the supplement form is far better for yourself. Depending on, from there, it really depends on what you present with. There are other ones, if it's magnesium is always good. I will say this much about calcium and magnesium. When you take them in supplement form, the body competes for absorption. And so you either get one or the other, you don't get both. And typically you don't get the magnesium. We're really epidemically low in magnesium, as we are in vitamin D. I just did an entire newsletter on vitamin D. I will say this much that I did address in the newsletter, and that is, if you give the body something it's designed to make, it's going to stop producing it. I've had that challenged. I've had that questioned. And the fact is, what I've learned is that everything is a message. Everything signals the cells. It sends signals. And so if you're sending signals to the body, I'll just give you the vitamin D. First of all, I mean, it's going to register as stress, okay? All of a sudden, you've just activated something because now the body no longer needs to make it. It can, so what's it going to do with excess vitamin D? It's going to store it in the fat. We have an increasing problem with weight in the United States. I mean, people are talking about it all over the place. I see weight issues as a hormonal imbalance, but I also see it as a protection mechanism, if you will, with regards to toxins, because if you can't eliminate it, another physiological effect of stress is stagnant lymph. And if you can't eliminate your toxins, it's going to store it in the fatty tissues. And it's going to have to, it's going to add to it in order to keep you protected. I do realize there's a lot of other factors that go into this. This is an oversimplification, but I'm really trying to make some points here, which is the hormonal system is out of balance. We have a high number of people that are low in vitamin D. We have an extraordinary number of people taking vitamin D supplements, and they're adding to their health issues. I realize how important vitamin D is, but there are other ways to get vitamin D into your system. And actually, I should say there's actually ways to stimulate the production of vitamin D, and that's what I cover in the supplement. The newsletter. But that said, if you give the body what it's supposed to make, it's going to stop making it because you're sending a signal that you don't need to make it, and so the body will quit. Thereby, the system becomes out of balance, and that alone. There are other reasons why we're not getting vitamin D in, which does lie in the genes, in the epigenome. This is something else that gets tested when you do the methylation pathway, which is called the VDR, the vitamin D receptor. So again, if you're taking too much vitamin D, you're going to turn that stuff off. So this is really, I don't know, I just came at a loss for words. I'm really just trying to emphasize the importance of rethinking, thinking unconventionally. We are entitled to good health. I don't feel like I don't think it's a monetary privilege. We're all entitled to good health, and I do recognize and appreciate our healthcare system. They do make a big difference, and there's no reason in the world why all of it doesn't work together. But we have to begin working with the system as opposed to working with the label. And so that said, vitamin D is an important vitamin, and at the same time, the body is capable of producing it. But just think about what's happening when we stop, when we actually do take it. We are interfering with the system. So regulating the hormonal system, which can be done with oils, which can be done through diet, which includes magnesium. That's part of the reason why I brought that up. Magnesium also helps to quiet the immune system. I've had a number of questions with regards to the immune system. The immune system is rather complex because it's segmented, and it does play off the hormonal system. So this is where symptoms are very important, because these methylation tests aren't testing really your immune system. They're not testing your immunoglobulins. And so the symptoms identify what part of the immune system is potentially overreacting and underreacting. And there again, you want to stabilize the immune system as opposed to stimulating it or depressing it, really stabilizing it. And again, if you're taking immunosuppressants, the last thing you want to do is take something that's an immunostimulant, which includes your herbs and your oils. So understanding which ones are, not going to counteract and cause problems with your immunosuppressants. So really learning how to regulate it. Yeah, it sounds complicated, but with a little bit of guidance, it's very possible. And so that's really what I wanted to get to today, is really speaking to why the change. And I know that I've kind of talked about this a little bit before, but it's just really coming up recently because I've been writing a lot about it to clients, speaking a lot about it, and even writing about it in my blog. And that is just that the bottom line to health issues is the way the body is reacting to the environment. And somebody might go, well, duh. But it really lies in the genes. It really lies in the DNA. And what's even more important is understanding that we're not breaking free from that cycle, because it's in a heightened state, because there's so much information. And sadly, we're continuing to add more and more and more information to the system. Hence, less is more. So if you'd like to talk to me or have any comments, please let me know. I'm always happy to contact, to visit with you via email, Tammy@synergessence.com. Please visit my website at synergessence.com. You're welcome to sign up for a newsletter. They don't come out on a regular, they come out maybe every 6 to 8 weeks, because I put a lot into it. And I'm happy to, if you sign up, I'm happy to send you previous versions so that you can kind of see how I break it down. And there's just a lot of information that goes into it. So not a lot of selling, but a lot of content on how to use oils and nutrition, and including your own thoughts. The first one was regarding spring detox, or really how to help the detox the whole system on a regular basis. This last one was on vitamin D, and I think the next one's going to be on iron. So don't hold me to that. I might change my mind, but for right now, that's what I'm thinking about. But anyway, hope you guys are really enjoying your weekend wherever you are, and I look forward to hearing from you. Bye.